Okay, good morning and welcome. This is our Hawaii State Senate Committee on Commerce and Consumer Protection, Wednesday, February 4th, 2026, 9:30 a.m. deferred agenda in conference room 229. We will be reconvening on two bills that were heard yesterday. SB 2471 relating to the powers of artificial persons, and SB 2829 also relating to the powers of artificial persons. We had a robust conversation and a lot of testimony on these two measures, which I think are very significant for our election system and our democracy. Upon further discussion with the Attorney General's office after a robust Q&A period, the recommendation to the committee is that we defer decision-making on these two measures one more time with the intention of passing out an amended version of each bill, hopefully with the support of the administration and their lawyers. So we will defer decision-making on these measures until Tuesday, February 10th, 2026, in this room 229 at 9:30 a.m. Any comments or discussion? No? Okay, so we'll adjourn that agenda. Okay, reconvening on this Wednesday, February 4th, 2026, 9:35 a.m. agenda in conference room 229 at the Hawaii State Capitol to reconsider SB 2180 relating to deposits of public funds. This measure was heard in this committee yesterday in a joint hearing with the Housing Committee. We had some late testimony that the members were not able to receive prior to the hearing, so we deferred action on it so everybody could take a look. And if there are no objections, I'm prepared to make a recommendation, which is to pass this measure out with a defective effective date of July 1, 2050. Members, any discussion? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, passing with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Thank you. Vice Chair also votes aye. Senator Lamasau.
Aye.
Senator McKelvey is excused. Senator Awa.
Aye.
Measure is adopted.
Thank you very much. We're adjourned. Okay. Okay, good morning and welcome to this Wednesday, February 4th, 2026, 9:30 a.m. joint committee agenda between the Hawaii State Senate Committees on Commerce and Consumer Protection and the Committee on Energy and Intergovernmental Affairs to consider three bills. The first is SB 2033 relating to renewable energy. This measure requires the Public Utilities Commission to establish a streamlined grid-ready homes interconnection process. First up, we have the PUC with comments. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Ki'oholole, Chair Wakai, Vice Chair Senator Fukunaga, Senator Chang, and members of the committee. My name is John Itumura, Chair of the PUC. And with me today to assist with any questions is Andrew. Good morning. The Commission supports the intent of this measure to establish streamlined and transparent interconnection processes for residential customers. While the Commission supports efforts to expedite the interconnection of distributed energy resources, the Commission does have concerns because establishing the prescribed process in this measure would require considerable time and resources among various parties and stakeholders to determine the cost of significant infrastructure upgrades necessary for such interconnections. Currently, issues relating to residential interconnection timelines will be considered in a new docket. Also, this measure refers to grid-ready homes. Therefore, clarification is necessary whether grid-ready homes are a subset of the residential stock or refers broadly to any home equipped with distributed energy resources or energy efficiency technology. For example, Governor Green's recent executive order number 2501 refers to zero energy ready homes, a term applying only to new single family projects. It's also unclear at present if this measure seeks to expedite current queues or establish new procedures for a subset of interconnection cases. Furthermore, this measure contemplates the role of the Hawaii Electric Reliability Administration, or HERA, to facilitate the implementation of this customer-sited interconnection process. The Commission has procured a consultant to serve as the HERA, and the HERA scope of work will focus on interconnection queues for utility-scale projects versus residential interconnection queues.
Thank you, Chair. Next, we have the consumer advocate with comments. Thank you, and thank you for standing on your testimony. Hawaiian Electric in opposition. Good morning.
Good morning, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committees. My name is Shannon Olivado on behalf of Hawaiian Electric. We are supporting the intent of the bill, but as the PUC chair has stated, we are opposed to the process proposed. Also, the reference and use of HERA funding to expedite and implement this program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Hawaii Solar Energy Association with comments. Good morning.
Aloha, Chair, Chairs, Vice Chairs. Rocky Mold, Hawaii Solar Energy Association. I'm going to stand on my testimony in strong support of this measure. I'd just like to add a little additional context. This measure is about updating our interconnection process for new technologies that are coming online that are lower cost and more grid friendly. It's also about meeting our significant renewable energy goals here in Hawaii. It's been over 6 months now since this legislature passed SB 589, which was signed into law as Act 266. It's been over a year now since Governor Green's Executive Order 25-01. Both of those measures put in place a 50,000 rooftop solar target in 5 years. That's 10,000 per year. The last number that I saw from HECO was we had a year of 6,500 installs this year. That's a great year, but that's only 65% of that 10,000 goal. So we really need to pick up the pace and create a more streamlined process to bring rooftop solar and energy storage online. And remember, this new technology that's coming online is lower cost. This is going to lower costs for everyone, for customers and the overall grid. So thank you very much for the opportunity to testify. I'm here for any questions if you have them.
Thank you very much. KIUC with comments online. Good morning.
Vice chairs and members of the committees. My name is Scott Sato, and I'm the Government Affairs and Energy Services Manager at Hawaii Island Utility Cooperative. KIUC stands on its written testimony, providing comments, and has noted some possible amendments for your consideration. And we thank you for the opportunity to provide feedback.
Thank you very much. That's all the registered testimony we have for individuals who indicated they would be present at the hearing. Is there anyone else online or in the room who would like to submit testimony on this measure? Okay, in total, there were 27 organizations or individuals who submitted testimony in support, 2 in opposition, and 4 with comment. Oh, actually, the 4 with comments just spoke. Members' questions? Senator DeCoit.
PC, please. Thank you. What is a grid-ready home interconnection process like? Explain that to me.
Actually, I'm going to turn that over to Andrew for the specifics.
So I believe, as interpreted or as implied in the bill, it would be a more streamlined process in which a homeowner or project owner could get their project online. It's not unlike, I would say, a process we currently use for the regulated side with HECO and KRC for that matter. But if we were to do it without the input of, and maybe I'm straying too much here, but if we were to do it without the input of all the stakeholders, there might be some issues with it, that we have not, need to be resolved. So it would.
And could you just state your full name? Just so that
Well, my name's Andrew Okabe. I'm a utility analyst at the Public Utilities Commission.
Thank you.
If I may supplement Mr. Okabe's testimony or response, is that traditionally the commission has reviewed interconnection issues. I understand and recognize that the concern is that it often takes very long or is very difficult to complete the process or be approved for interconnection. But that's one of the concerns that we brought up, or the need for clarification is that we've been dealing with large-scale utility or utility interconnection rather than residential.
So I guess trying to figure out how does it actually work? So I get on house, like interconnect. How you looking at streamlining? We just like bypassing some stuff, or like we're not doing the average? Like I'm gonna apply, I'm gonna put in my stuff, and where does that leave the majority of the people that wanna do the?
If I may, before I turn it over to Mr. Okabe, my understanding, the intent of the bill is to provide the process, to provide guidelines, so that all parties are clear as to what the process is and the timelines that it will involve.
So part of what's involved may be grid upgrades even before someone would submit an application or want to install their system. So Hawaiian Electric and KOC would need to start upgrading some of their older circuits now, especially some of the ends of the circuits that are tapered lines. They would have to change those out.
Okay, so because the reason why I'm asking this is because take Molokai, getting them a grid space. So you telling me the utility gonna pay for that? They're gonna pass that on to me to upgrade to then do an interconnection
To allow this to occur.
to allow that to occur. So I'm gonna pay more for do that when I'm already struggling to, what most people struggling to get by on a day-to-day average.
That may be the case.
Well, those are the issues that
You guys gonna look at.
we will
to
consider.
analyze. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Members? Senator McKelvey.
Okay.
Followed by Fidel.
Just real quickly, this is what I love about this process and the public testifying, is because sometimes they come in with incredible, I don't know if you saw Ms. Freitas's testimony on concerns with the bill and suggested amendments, but in looking at that, if this committee were to move the bill forward, would adopting or considering amendments like the one she has proposed, would that address the concerns that you see with this measure?
Oh, I'm not sure they've been the testimony was made public this morning.
Okay.
So if you have it in front of you.
Basically,
then-
consumer cost protections, equity and access standards, grid hosting capacity transparency, reliability and safety exceptions, independent oversight of cost recovery, limits on delegated authority, and consumer remedies and dispute resolution were some of the things that were flagged as potential concerns with the bill moving forward. Would you agree that considering those, or that looking at that would create some guardrails and more certainty in the measure moving forward?
Those are all elements that are very obvious and would be considered.
Okay. But so you would support amendments like that in the bill to try to fine tune it?
Any amendments that provide further clarification is always helpful.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chair. Appreciate you asking the question.
Senator Fidel.
Yeah, so, not for you guys. I don't know the guy's name, the one keeper.
Mr. Moll? Thank you.
Let's save money or something.
Yeah. And if you could just reintroduce yourself and your title.
I'm Rocky Mold, Executive Director of the Hawai'i Solar Energy Association.
Yeah, so earlier you said that, as we do this, in the long run, it's gonna save money. My solar on my home is 30 years old already. We put it on there, no matter what was the connection and what was the lines put in, upgrades or whatever put in, we really didn't see a cost savings, even when we put in the PV. But you saying this, what decade will we start seeing this? Because you're gonna have to change lines, upgrade things, to retrofit what you're saying that is gonna be a cost savings to the consumer. But in what year? When I'm 90 years old? Because right now, none of the cost savings in my community, with all that ugly solar that we see, is giving anybody any breaks in my community. And I got probably the most on my side of the island with solar farms from Pearl City, Apa Waipahu, Kunia, Kapolei, Eva Beach. I think we get like 2 or 3. Guess how much dollars I save? They say in 30, 40 years, I'll be dead. 30, 40 years, we should invest in something else. Because again, you guys keep saying that, not just you, and you guys asking the questions too, but in the long run, who is it gonna save for? We always talk about protecting the environment, which I'm great for that. But again, to what cost? Because again, we can't even afford the electric right now. My electric bill has been going up since we put in that. Never went down, right? We never do anything different. Got rid of the AC, got rid of the big ice maker, everything. Our bill never really went down. So it's about $500 to $600 a month, every month, right? So again, I'd like to know what would be your cost saving, what is the immediate cost savings to the consumer by making, or how retrofitting the line with Hawaiian Electric or whoever you gotta make the upgrades to? When is the cost savings gonna come in? When my grandkids are born? Hopefully 40 years from now, but anyway, you see what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, each project is different, and 30 years ago was a long time ago in the solar industry. There's been a ton of innovation and cost savings that have happened since then. I'm sorry that you didn't experience the savings that you expected in your project. Again, have to look at the details to understand that. But over the last 10, 15 years, projects have come online and they've provided immediate bill savings for customers on their bills. When designed right and when done with, designed right and sold right, it actually brings immediate savings to someone's bill. Now, it's an upfront investment, and it's how you pay for that upfront investment and over what time frame that determines your payoff. And those range depending on what incentives are available, where interest rates are. But we do see payoff times less than 10 years now in most instances, if not all instances. And with the right incentive packages, those can be 5 years to 7 years. And so it all depends. What we've seen with time, the chief cost on our system right now is the reliance on fossil fuel to fuel our electricity system right now. So the faster we can get away from fossil fuel and find lower cost alternatives, the sooner we're going to start bringing overall electricity costs down for everyone. And so there have been studies that have shown that particularly the new technology that's coming online for solar energy storage and combined with different grid services programs, the right combination, that actually brings savings to the overall grid for everyone, because it's opening up the grid for more cost-effective energy to be able to come online. Studies have been done, across, the U.S. that have shown that sort of these new packages of rooftop solar and energy storage are bringing costs down sooner rather than later for folks. And that's what this bill is about. This bill is about allowing for those new lower cost technologies to come online more quickly so that we can all feel the benefit sooner of that cost-effective energy.
So you're telling me that who's gonna do the upgrades for we can get this online quicker?
So in this bill, there's a recommended cost-sharing mechanism. And I would just say that cost-sharing mechanism is designed for customers to pay into almost like an insurance fund. And that insurance fund will share in the costs of those upgrades and help pay down the cost of those upgrades for customers. The customers interconnecting ultimately are going to be the ones on the hook for those interconnection costs, right? And so we're not saying to pass those costs onto the whole grid. We're actually creating a mechanism to help pay that down, the cost of that for customers. So that's the design of that cost sharing mechanism.
So what is the percent of a household of 3 that if they want to buy into this, what do you think the estimated cost would be them on their household living expenses?
So so they'd have to find upfront costs. They'd have to find money upfront to be able to pay for the system. And we're going through a pretty rapid disruption right now, given federal tax credits and what's happened to the residential tax credit. So we're going to start probably going to see more systems that are leased. And those systems that are leased can bring immediate savings to customers who do that. Now, ultimately, buying a system outright, getting a loan and buying a system outright might provide more long-term savings in the end for a customer. But with leased products, you get immediate savings, almost immediate savings.
The reason why I bring this up, I don't know if where you're at, but we're in Hawaii, 2025. Nobody can even squeeze one turnip for any more juice. So you're gonna ask them to upfront household costs that they can barely even pay the water and the electric to stay on now, to benefit them within 7 years or possible 7 years.
Yeah, so the GEMS program, the Hawaii Green Infrastructure Authority program, it's a program designed for low to moderate income residents to be able to afford solar. And I would recommend taking a close look at that because the requirements of that program are to provide at least 20% savings on electricity bills for folks like immediately. So those types of programs are bringing immediate savings. Of course, those programs, there's some public support of those programs, to be able to bring that to low and moderate income folks. But solar, it really does, it's the most cost-effective tool for bringing bills down, electricity bills down for people in Hawaii. So the more we can get that out there, the more we can get consumers over that upfront hurdle of investment, the more they're gonna benefit from those savings. So that's what our public policy advocacy is about. It's about finding ways to get people over that hurdle, over that hump, so that they can feel that savings in 5, 7, 10 years, as opposed to 20 years. And by the way, costs are continuing to come down. So it's with these new technologies that this bill is trying to promote, trying to bring in, those are allowing us to do more, to get more savings with less investment. That's why we one of the chief benefits of this bill is we're going to bring in new technologies that do more for lower cost to lower bills for people.
So you talk about these programs, but again, how these low and moderate income families would navigate through that because they're too busy working 2 jobs. The reason why I'm saying this is my community is not for it. They're not for this bill. And I got a lot of calls in opposition to that because they don't understand the complexity of what you're trying to say. Savings, costs, and everything, but some of them get 3, 4 families in a house that they share. They're right up transportation, public transportation, because they cannot afford car and insurance. So now again, these guys will probably never be able to navigate what you're talking about because they're not gonna have the time to do that to get the cost savings. Yeah. And then we're gonna buy into a plan that my community probably cannot afford. So again, it's going to exclude certain communities, certain rural area communities. When it comes to these savings, then again, it's only going to be for the rich that are going to be able to afford this product and continue to them to save, and the poor is not going to be able to do this because they cannot make a loan because they have bad credit. So then how are we going to have cost savings onto them? If you tell me that, 100% everything is going to be to the people putting it in and not the consumer, then maybe it's a little different. But again, you selling a product to improve on it, on the cost of the consumer. That's an issue right there. If I want to improve a car, right, I'm a manufacturer, I improve a car, okay, right? We go pass the cost on to the consumer of the improvements, reverse camera, everything like that. Well, again, we're talking about utilities. Again, we're going to be passing over. So again, in my lifetime, I don't think my community will ever see that big savings of all of that solar farms around there, because they're not now. Some of them is older than others, some of them is new, but my community is not seeing it.
Senator,
They're right next to
can
it.
I ask
So
you
that's
to
the
ask a question?
That's the question. How are you gonna have them navigate?
So I think we haven't communicated the benefits of these programs well enough to our communities. These systems are bringing savings to people. We need to get them to more people to bring more savings to people. And it is incumbent upon the solar industry and policymakers to communicate how this is happening. And I'm sorry that you've come out with that impression that it isn't benefiting your community.
Well, it's not my impression, it's my community's.
Right. And so there are some consumer protection bills for solar that are going around. Yesterday, we heard SB 2032. That bill is designed to be more transparent about the offering that solar companies are coming to people with. And so part of this is we need to communicate this better. I absolutely agree that we need to get the word out and educate folks on how this is benefiting them a lot better.
Thank you, Chair.
Members, other questions? Okay, so there are multiple testifiers who commented that there may be some confusion with the term grid-ready home as to whether we're talking about a packaged home or a new home that has sufficient infrastructure to receive PV built in versus a retrofitted home. Can you comment on those concerns?
I understand that, and when I saw those comments, and when I looked at it, I would offer an amendment to clear that up. It's a pretty simple amendment, adding the word with and 2 commas into the definition of grid-ready home. The design, the intent of this is to create a process to upgrade homes to be grid-ready, but also streamline for already existing grid-ready homes. So it's upgrading and retrofitting to achieve grid readiness for homes and serving grid-ready homes. That's the intent.
So it's a universal standard?
Yes, it's a universal, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Senator DeCoite.
So, I don't usually agree with the guy all at the other end of this table, but I have to say, upgrading and retrofitting costs money. Yeah.
Yep.
So basically, yesterday's bill that passed, you're telling me, based on what you just said, wasn't transparent, or was it more transparent than this bill?
It's about creating a better process and more
So
transparency.
let's put it this way. So say if there's 100 homes that is a grid-ready home that they upgraded, and say one of those homes is 50 years old, whatever new technology is there, right? The homeowner would have to pay. Who knows what that cost would be? But of those 100 homes, how much would, if your company or any company was to then secure doing the retrofitting and upgrading, how much would that company make?
That's proprietary information. I represent the industry.
That's what I
as a
figured.
whole,
That's
right?
okay. Enough said.
So,
That's all, that's okay.
profit
Enough
margins,
said. Thank you,
yeah,
Chair.
yeah.
Thank you.
Can you speak to what type of work it would take to upgrade a 50-year-old Hicks home on Oahu, say in Kaneohe, so that it can receive a PV system, well, so that it can meet this grid-ready standard and get, I guess, accelerated approval and installation of the solar, right? That's the point.
So it would be the normal process that you would look at for looking at a home. One, you would want to check to see whether the roof was stable, right? And when that roof was retrofitted or
Okay, the roof,
upgraded, right?
what
So-
else? If you could just
And
summarize
then
really
you look at
briefly.
the bill and find out how much electricity they're using, and then you size the system based on that, and you look at the time of day that they're using that energy, and you make calculations, and then you go install that.
Well, but that's, okay, so those are that's the installation process. I'm talking about what you need to take that 50-year-old home from whatever standard it's at now to grid ready. So, okay, we gotta make sure the roof can handle the system, because that's weight you're adding onto it. What else would they need to consider?
You would want to update the main panel to make sure that main panel is up to new standards, and that's very much addressed in this bill. It's about allowing for
Okay.
a more efficient
You gotta make sure
process.
the electrical can receive the PV
Yes.
on the roof. Okay, what else?
And really, it's the components of a rooftop solar energy storage system along with that main panel upgrade. And here's what we've been talking about. The key is there might need to be some, grid side improvements that are done to allow.
But that's
for-
outside the fence.
That's outside the fence.
So that's not contemplated in the definition of a grid-ready home.
No.
Right, it's just basically what we're talking about is whether the electrical in the house has been upgraded to be able to receive
Right.
PV and
Two-way
then
flow
distribute it out,
electrons,
right? And then whether the roof can handle
Right. And then electric vehicle charging is another element.
and then whether
of
you
this.
have like the 220 in the garage,
Exactly,
so that they
those kinds
can
of
charge the
things.
car.
Yeah, so it'd be upgrading
Okay.
the electrical system to be
Okay.
able to accept, these new technologies. And actually, the new
But
technologies
it's basically
make it easier
electrical
yeah, it's
and then
electrical.
structural.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, we'll move on. Okay, thank you very
Thank you.
much. Next measure is SB 2487 relating to the Public Utilities Commission. This measure clarifies that for electric utilities, performance-based incentives include revenue adjustment mechanisms, cost control mechanisms, rewards for superior performance, and penalties for subpar performance, and confirms that the PUC may adopt alternative rate-making procedures to establish electric utility rates and performance-based incentives. PUC with comments.
Aloha again, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. The PUC stands on its written testimony in support of this measure, but I'd just like to comment on a couple areas. It's very clear that there's a lot of concern with what appears to be a return to a traditional cost of service review for the going forward, and for purposes of setting rates into the next period, the multi-year period. But what is important to point out is the timing. So to my understanding, because I wasn't at the PUC during this interim, is that the last rate case happened right before COVID. And therefore, when the order came out, which was in the summer of 2020, and shutdown had already happened, there are certain assumptions being made. And in response to that, that's one of the driving reasons to go through what would be a more traditional review so that the rates are properly set. And this doesn't mean that it provides the utility with that opportunity to, this is the wrong term, but to, start padding its expenses and costs. It's the opportunity to go back and look at carefully what we couldn't look at because of the circumstances at the time. And then also the other concern of the forward test year. Yes, that we're subject to that per our regulations. Any statute to change that, of course, will have an impact on our regulations. But in review of all rate cases, there is always a good look at historical. In fact, often that drives the initial review for all the rate case proceedings is looking back.
Thank you very much. Next, we have the consumer advocate with comments.
Chairs, vice chairs, members, Mickey Knox for the consumer advocate. Director Michelangelo really wanted to be here, but he had to cover an important wildfire safety meeting. I just wanted to quickly summarize 2 points from our testimony. We have a concern that the proposed amendments to 269-16.1A might unintentionally take away some very important scrutiny and due process and public transparency provisions in 269-16 and parts of HAR 16601. And the second point is the proposed new 269-16.1 B and C. We have a concern that that would lock in the PUC when it is evaluating a lot of parts of PBR that weren't in the original Act 5, weren't in 269-16.1, but were created through regulatory processes, which even my office was a part of. But we need to see how they're working, and the PUC needs the ability to see what is working and what should be changed. Available for questions.
Thank you very much. Ulupono Initiative in support.
Chairs, vice chairs, members of the committee, Michael Colon, Energy Director at Ulupono Initiative, in standing in my testimony in strong support. Wanted to just add a little bit on that. The legislature in their guidance wanted to do something different in directing the Public Utilities Commission to do PBR in the first place. We see that there's a tension between the existing framework that the regulators have mentioned and the guidance that was directed through the PBR mandate. We are seeing a little bit of backsliding. I think it's mainly just change management. It's new stuff and we're being asked to do something differently. And this would reaffirm and reassert that this is what we want to see as outcomes, is doing this differently, tying performance for the utility to their revenue, their achievement of revenues, so that we can more closely monitor, and then it should have some built-in cost control. The historic test year, along with the concerns about due process that are raised by the regulators, are valid, and there's questions about it, but that's what can be established through the design process that we've been engaged in for several years. So I would just urge the committee to pass this bill, knowing that this process needs to be fulfilled. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Hawaiian Electric with comments?
Hawai'i Electric stands on its comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for standing on your testimony. Earth Justice in support?
Good morning, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committee. Isaac Moriwaki, Earth Justice. Standing in strong support of this measure which would clarify and reaffirm the Ratepayer Protection Act of 2018 with a follow-up Ratepayer Protection Act of 2026. Performance-based regulation worked as the legislature intended. Why do we know this? Because before PBR, the electric utility, HECO, was proposing a total of $100 million per year rate increase. That's every year, $100 million extra. The PUC held the line and imposed that cost control discipline of performance-based regulation. And so that's at least how much money we saved going into PBR. Now, this bill would reaffirm that framework and the legislature's mandate under the Ratepayer Protection Act. And really, it's necessary guidance given what we saw in that informational briefing that this committee held last year in June. Really, no one could have sat through that and watched that. And chairs, you were there, Senator Wakai, Senator Fukunaga, Senator Richards, you were there, Senator McKelvey, Senator Richards, you said, we're adrift here. No one could have seen that and not realize that, yes, we need this guidance and help. And that's what this bill does. And even in the testimony today, there's mixed messages and there's dissonance, right? Oh, we don't need it. And yet we have this potential traditional rate case and a historic rate hike hanging over our heads. Contrary to what the consumer advocate said, this does not take away the PUC's flexibility. In fact, it does the exact opposite. It gives them the discretion to do the right thing and uphold the original purposes of the Ratepayer Protection Act. I can go point by point in rebutting some of these testimonies, but I'm available for questions as necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also have the Hawaii Clean Power Alliance submitting written testimony in support. Is there anyone else who would like to testify? Please, good morning.
Aloha, chairs, vice chairs, and committee members. Henry Curtis, Life of the Land. The PBR was supposed to have a formalistic way for gradually increasing rates over time. The past 5-year period did not anticipate the runaway inflation, the tariffs, the supply chain interruptions, and everything else. So HECO has not pulled in enough money to cover some of their costs. We anticipated an inflation rate. The inflation rate was much higher. So rates are going to be adjusted. Now, all parties in the proceeding believe that HECO is going to have to increase the rates. The issue is whether we just look at the things that HECO wants us to look at, or whether we take a more comprehensive look and see if things are being padded in other areas. So Earth Justice, Ulupono Initiative, and Blue Planet HECO would like to just look at the things that HECO is concerned with and increase them by a certain amount. Consumer Advocate and Life of Land would like to look at things more comprehensively to make sure things are not being padded. Now, if you call that a rate case, okay, but it's not anything but looking at things more comprehensively so we don't increase rates quite as much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to testify?
Chair, is he supporting or he again opposing?
Comments.
Comments.
Thank you for clarifying. Is there anyone else? Okay, members, questions? Okay, I have a question for the consumer advocate. Okay, good morning, Mickey. I'm trying to understand how you would characterize the concerns you cited. I mean, can you point to the provision of the bill that triggers a due process risk?
Sure. It's the proposed amendments, I think it's section 3 of the bill is where the amendments are.
Okay.
Let me just pull that up.
I'm just trying to confirm that your concern is that we strike a reference to section 269-16 and instead replace it with a reference to
This chapter.
chapter 269.
Well, it's the specificity of 269-16 versus the whole chapter. The way we
How
did,
does that trigger a due process risk?
Yeah, please.
we tried to be very careful in the way that we phrased our testimony. We said that it creates unhelpful uncertainty about the due process that is in 16.
I guess I'm having some trouble understanding how citing to chapter 269 instead of citing to chapter 269-16 triggers a due process risk.
Chair,
Isn't 269-16 in chapter 269?
yes.
Okay, so how could a consumer read this bill in a way that triggers a concern that their due process rights are not accounted for?
Chair, we did not say that we thought that it definitely did. We very carefully phrased that it creates uncertainty, which we are worried about.
Can you
And
help me
it's a
understand
second-
what the uncertainty is?
The uncertainty is if the scrutiny and public transparency that is in 269-16, if that would still apply or not, specifically. And a lot of the process that's in HR 16601, which is tied to 16, and applications under 16.
So you're talking about the administrative rules.
Both the statute and the administrative rules. There is specifically in the statute itself in 16, and it cross-references the public hearings in 269-12.
Okay, but 269-12 is also in chapter 269.
Yes. Chair, I am not disagreeing with you that there's all in chapter 269.
Okay,
That's why we very carefully just said it's a matter of specificity and concerning uncertainty.
but you're saying there's uncertainty, but not explaining what the uncertainty is. That creates uncertainty.
You pointed to a toe as part of the human body, but why is pointing to the toe as part of the human body going to impact you? In other words, why, to his point?
It would be like if you said, what do you walk on? The human body. We'd prefer to say it's the foot.
How does that trigger a due process risk?
It is a two-step process. So let me go away from the word due process and more on scrutiny and investigation and public transparency. There are parts specifically in 269-16 and cross-referenced to 12, but only through 16, and parts of HR 16601 only if an application is coming in under 16.
Okay. I just think, saying due process risk triggers a constitutional concern. And if there isn't one, if it's a process concern, then the PUC has the discretion to change their rules. It's their rule. They have delegated authority to change the rules.
As the PUC in its testimony pointed out, there are constitutional concerns, but that's HECO's argument to
Okay,
make. Ours is scrutiny.
but
Ours
you've
is
made your
investigation.
points and not theirs. Okay, and then the second part is you cited the sections B and C proposed to chapter 269-16.1 as creating where's my note here? You made a comment about those two provisions, but they're discretionary provisions. They're mays, not shalls. And then presumptions, not requirements. So I guess we're giving the PUC, what the bill proposes to give the PUC the discretion to decide, but establishes guardrails so that the public has assurance that we're not just solely looking at the test year, that they're also looking at what happened during the last 5 years, because that's what the public is looking at when they think about how much their rates are about to be increased by. but there's no requirement that they have to ignore the test year. I guess I'm just a little bit confused about what the concern is there.
If the legislature reads this as maintaining commission discretion, and that's a good thing, then why not leave the additional discretion, the greater discretion that's already there? Sorry, that's a rhetorical question.
All right, okay, thank you. Senator McKelvey.
Whose due process rights were you talking about?
Due process rights of customers who we represent. We are statutorily representing all of the customers of any public utility.
Well, it seems by your testimony, both on this and the previous bill, you're asserting the concerns of the utilities. And so that's why I asked that question. Because,
Very much not.
well, go back and look at your testimony in the last bill. You said the utility was the main concern and the effect on the utility. Then you talk about the ratepayer.
We see the effects coming through the utility. So if cost shifts happen at the utility, then other customers have to take up those costs. And we represent those customers.
If the regulatory environment allows it. I guess what I'm saying is the consumer doesn't seem to be the front and center focus. It seems to be the effect on other entities, both regulatory and otherwise. I'm just hoping to hear about how not only it affects the consumer, but what we can do to empower legislation like this to protect and advance consumers. That's the part I'm missing from all the testimony. Thank you, Chair.
I appreciate that intent.
Appreciate you.
Members, other questions?
One question, Chair.
Senator DeCoy.
PUC, please. I'm just trying to figure out how has performance-based incentives benefited our ratepayers?
That is, again, I have to apologize that I wasn't part of the initial process and I'm being brought up to speed. But that process, it involves providing incentives to the performance metrics of the utility that will bring costs down. What needs to be done going forward is more of an emphasis on penalty mechanisms that will also send a strong message to the utilities on efficiency, which also will have an impact on costs being brought down for the consumers.
Thank you, Chair.
Can I follow up? I mean, in the briefing over the summer, we spent an extended amount of time, and there was general agreement in the room that, in addition to penalties, there needs to be a recalibration of the incentives, right? That
Correct.
perhaps there were a lot of them, and perhaps they were not necessarily calibrated in a way that gets us the result that we want. Because I seem to recall sort of everyone in the room acknowledging, including the utility, who met many of the performance metrics, but maybe not all of them. And so I do hope as we continue this conversation going forward, that that's taken into consideration, because I think that's what you guys are working on right now, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Any other, Senator Mukai?
I think the PBR had good intentions and it's been in effect for some 6 or so years. And to Chair Keokaloli's question, I think the jury's still out as to the effectiveness of PBR. So maybe if you could give us some highlights and lowlights. I mean, it was supposed to provide sticks and carrots. And I'm not really sure as to how did the sticks work, what penalties, what did HECO not meet, and what were the penalties for that behavior? And on the flip side, if they reached whatever the goals were, what kind of incentives did we give to HECO that ultimately benefited the ratepayer?
Okay, before I turn it over to Daniel Park, who's our analyst responsible for PBR, my understanding is that the sticks were not put in place. And that's really important to complete the PBR picture, in addition to what Chair was talking about with all calibrations, even on the on the incentive side as well. Daniel.
Yes. So Daniel Park, I'm an economist at the PUC. So as Chair Ichimura was saying, that the only sort of sticks that are in place at the moment in terms of an actual hard penalty on the companies, to my understanding, are the existing reliability PIMs. So if the Hawaiian Electric companies fail to provide, or if their safety metrics sort of deviate from the historical performance that we expect from them, that they do get penalized for that. And they have, I don't recall which specific years, but over the MRPs, each of the companies has, to some degree, they've incurred those penalties. Looking at the data, it's a bit difficult to sort of fully capture sort of like whether, or the company's performance outside of, say, because what happened with the Lahaina wildfires, because that significantly did affect their reliability metrics, including a lot of the PSPS stuff that they've implemented post Lahaina wildfire. We've had to sort of adjust the PIMs on the fly to account for that, and give the company space so that they could find the sort of programs or procedures that would work on their end in order to maintain safety on the grid. So it's complicated, but at the moment, that is the sort of the one area where sticks have been applied, because these PIMs do exist and the companies have been penalized in the past for failing to meet these reliability standards.
For the general public, PIMs are the performance incentive mechanisms.
So for the carrots that are out there, it seems like there's more carrots than sticks. What exactly did HECO achieve, and then what were the rewards for that achievement?
Okay, well, I think one of the most successful PIMs that we had during the first MRP was related to the interconnection process. So not for individual residents, like for example, what was being discussed earlier this morning, but rather at the utilities or at a more grid scale level. And the companies were able to bring that interconnection time down significantly, to the point where the commission, after we reviewed the data and the improvements the companies had made there, we decided that the PIM wasn't necessary anymore, because the companies had basically done what they did, which is reduce that interconnection time, and they were rewarded for that financially, and we didn't need to keep rewarding them anymore, so that PIM was sunsetted.
What was the amount of that reward?
I don't have that specific number off the top of my head, but I can get that to you.
Okay. So the commission will commit to providing a summary of both the penalties and the incentives that were provided to the MRP1.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to the last measure on this agenda. SB 2497 relating to electric energy. This measure requires all electric utilities to provide transparent customer bill impact analyses that are accessible to the public in a format reasonably usable by ratepayers. First up, the PUC with comments.
The PUC stands on its written testimony and is available for questions.
Thank you very much. The consumer advocate with comments.
Chair, just one note about our comments. We stand on our written comments, but to Senator McKelvey's earlier point, I want to point out where we talk about how we'd like to better understand the electric utilities basis for deeming certain aspects of bill impact calculations confidential. That's the type of thing where it's several steps removed. So for instance, if keeping certain information confidential from the public.
Is this on this bill here?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
If that keeps the RFP processes intact so that HECO can get better bids, lower bids for lower bills for all customers, that may look like we are concerned with something that the utility is concerned about. But as complicated as it is, that's about customers.
That needs to be your total point in all arguments, is about the consumer.
It is top of mind for everything we do.
I'm going to hold you to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Hawaiian Electric?
Senators, we appreciate the intent of the measure, but we express our concerns and our disagreement.
Thank you. We have KIUC in opposition online. Good morning.
Good morning. KIUC stands on its written testimony in respectful opposition to this proposal, and thank you again for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Thank you very much. CARES in support online.
Not present on Zoom, Chair.
Thank you. We also have written testimony and support from the Hawaii Clean Power Alliance, and the Office of Information Practices offered comments. Is there anyone else who would like to testify? Okay, members, questions? Senator Mukai.
PUC. This bill was offered because there's a black box when it comes to cost to consumers. And this bill just simply tries to provide some level of visibility on the bill impact analysis that the PUC does. And tries to kind of just get to the heart of the assumptions and methodology that the PUC takes as well as HECO takes that ultimately lands up on our bills. I mean, over the past 5 years, each individual homeowner has an average increase in their utility bill of about $60 a month. And I'm trying to wrap my head around how that's possible when, solar and batteries are coming in cheaper and cheaper, wind and other renewables are coming in way cheaper than oil, and our bills are going in the opposite direction. So I'm for years, trying to understand, like, how is this even possible? Any other business runs where the supply goes down or the costs go down, then the consumer sees a benefit of that. But in this case, the costs are going down for HECO, and all of us are paying more. So going into some of the testimony you pointed out as to why you're hesitant about supporting this measure, you talk about competitive harm that might be gotten because of this bill. But this bill doesn't ask for any bidder-specific information, correct?
That may be a subject of interpretation that we may need to go back and clarify.
Well, it doesn't. It just tries to give the public and a look into what is going on in the math behind the curtain. So there's no competitive disadvantage as 5 or so bidders bid into whatever their costs are for X amount of megawatts. We're not asking for what does AES do, what is Clearway doing. We're not asking for any of that information. We just want to understand how it is that whatever pricing decisions are made, how that all comes about.
The thought behind that response is that when the intent of the measure appears to want to look into the analysis that's done within the commission, the knee-jerk reaction is we look at everything, and within that voluminous amount of data is going to be considerations about comparative issues between vendors, maybe even vendors who are not part of the project, and therefore there's going to be concerns with confidentiality, I can't even begin to note. We provide a lot of information already, and so and I know it would be difficult even for this body to go through and try to highlight what's missing. You don't know what you don't know. But on the flip side, for us to say, we just can't open the books to everything, but this is what we look at. That's a process that we may need to work through in terms of how this bill is, or the impact of this measure.
Part of your testimony talks about closing part of the book by only sharing information on approved projects. But I think there's great value in us understanding projects that were disapproved as well. I mean, over the past 8 years, 50% of the projects have just kind of disappeared. And the public is wondering, like, was it because of financing on their part? Was it because HECO is doing things that irritate and push away the developers? We don't know. I think we should also know why projects were disapproved as well. I mean, that's like going through all of these bills and telling the public only about the bills that got approved and never letting them know why bills died here. So I don't think there should be any kind of restriction that you're only going to be looking at approved projects. We should look at the disapproved ones too and why they kind of just evaporated.
I completely agree with you, Senator. I think the intent of that response was probably narrow-sighted to those that have not been approved yet, and not so much the ones that have been disapproved.
Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions?
Yes, Chair.
Senator Favela?
No, so I'm not really understanding if you understand what Senator Glenn Wakai is saying. The transparency is big. We're asking these guys to pay, and then we select, well, you guys select on what they can and cannot see. So certain things we are privy to because we're elected officials. Because even like in the community where I'm up in Cunilla, project was coming on board. You guys PUC gave you guys input. Hawai'i Electric gave a kilowatt or whatever per whatever kilowatt. And then later on, negotiations went bad. Nobody know where they went. Came to the neighborhood board. Nobody know what happened to the project, why the project didn't come through. Because they had not only talk about service packages and taking care of the community, nonprofits, and having one great thing for help out the community. And then the project went away. Same thing what Senator Glenn Wakai is saying. We don't know. So we tell the community, hey, rah, 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 rah. And in transparency, they're gone. Then who holds the bag? Us elected officials.
Yes.
So what happened to the project. We would probably support the project, and then we didn't see the transparency of what happened. So I think this is a good bill to get more transparency and clarity as we move forward. So that's something that you guys should consider because, again, we deal with a lot of projects that we don't see to fruition and we don't know about it, especially when it comes to clean energy. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Subject to the concerns of any potential confidentiality, data and information. As I mentioned to Senator Wakai, I agree with you and disapprove projects to the extent that we can disclose, we will.
We don't like details, we just like know, if it was because of the negotiation, we don't even have to know the company's name, it's the project. That kind of stuff is why did it fail? Was it because of negotiation, cost too much, was it affordable for them? That's the kind of simple things we like know.
Yes.
Why they walk away, and if it was granted, then we need to know why it was granted. The deal was good, right? Kilowatts or whatever, location, all of those things.
Yes, and I do appreciate and understand, especially when there's an issue of community benefits that, has been promoted and marketed, and then it just goes away. That's a very high concern.
Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions? Okay, I have a question for Hiko. Thank you. Good morning.
Morning, James Abraham on behalf of Hawai'i Electric.
Thank you. I'd like you to comment on this whole line of questioning. Because I think I have a similar question, which I think is I think is the same question as the consumer advocate. I mean, what are we hiding and why are we hiding it? The point of this is to provide information that's reasonably useful for the consumer. So I have a hard time believing you're going to disclose proprietary information if you're putting it in a summary that normal ratepayers are going to try and decipher.
Well, so this bill is, looking for much more than, a high-level summary. We already do provide a lot of aggregated pricing information, but this bill would have, much more detailed information on, pricing and our assumptions and methodology that, it wouldn't be something that a typical residential customer, would be helpful or useful to them. This type of information is sensitive because it's information that more sophisticated, project developers could use to potentially manipulate their bids that they're providing into our renewable requests for proposals. So, that's our concern is that it could be, the result would be higher bids.
So I can appreciate the concern that you don't want to be leveraged by disclosing, negotiating positions that, could be taken advantage of by multiple potential bidders. I'm trying to understand what are the things that this would require you to disclose that doesn't come out through the docket process anyway?
Well, again, so in the dockets, we do provide on a confidential basis a lot of the information that this bill is trying to get disclosed publicly. So we do provide this information confidentially for the PUC and the consumer advocate to review, as well as interested parties in the docket. And they can review that as the PUC is, determining, making their determinations on the project itself. The difference is that this bill would, open it up and make that information and data available publicly, which is where we have the concern that it could be leveraged by, future bidders. They could see, what price do I need to have my future project come in on for it to get selected. So instead of bidding their, best price that, they wanted to have their lowest price so that they have the highest chance of their project getting selected, instead they could, raise that price based on these assumptions and
Yeah, we're going round and round. I understand the concern. I think it's that potentially more members than I and Senator Favela are, because I tend to agree with a lot of what he's saying. I mean, there's got to be some sort of space in between the two to where you guys are not getting leveraged against the consumer interest when providing a summary that regular people are going to be able to decipher. I mean, I think the point, the way I read this, if this is information that's going to be disclosed through a confidential PUC vetting process anyway, then we should be able to figure out a way to make this publicly available, since it's being reviewed by the PUC. And if you guys lie to the consumer, then they'll know it. So, I mean, there's a way. Okay, that's not a question. Thank you. If there are no other questions, no, Senator Okai.
Just a quick question. I'm trying to understand the harm that's going to be done by this, in your view, by this bill. Because you talk about how others might be able to eyes on the numbers and have a competitive advantage, but doesn't HECO also bid into projects?
Yes, we do. We have under the PUC's RFP process, we have a separate self-build team that is screened from our RFP team that's evaluating the bids. So the self-build team that is submitting the bids, they don't have any of the information about our assumptions and the pricing that we would be evaluating.
So you're going to convey to the public that you have some kind of a China wall between HECO project bidding and then HECO itself, and that somehow I don't believe that China walls are bulletproof. So from an outside perspective, see that HECO is bidding on its own projects. And so when you're talking about a competitive advantage for somebody else that might look at all the numbers, you have the front row seat into looking at all of the competition and then making a decision on how you're going to price things, correct?
Well, again, that's why this, as you call it, the China wall is set up. And again, the PUC is overseeing, all of our self-build bids that are selected. Again, they go through a review process for the PUC. So, there is a separation between the teams that are working on submitting bids for projects into the RFPs and the teams that are reviewing all of the bids, both self-build and outside parties, and evaluating them against one another.
It just seems like there's an inherent conflict just with that setup as well. Thank you, Chair.
Sure.
Senator Favela.
Okay, so let me get this clear. Confidentiality on the bidding and possible, they're gonna be able to adjust their bid the next time there's a project. Try to explain that to me, because as projects go along, prices do change on construction and cost of materials and certain things. So I'll give you an example, right? University of Hawaii Stadium, they use two different funding. We know the exact cost, same like with the stadium, right? We know what it's gonna cost at the end of the day, probably 7,000 billion, because it's not being done. But what I'm saying is, we already kind of know, right? We already kind of have a diagram. So the next time we have a big project, they're gonna still put them in the parameters. But you saying that it's not gonna be fair bidding, I don't think so. I don't think that would be a concern for the consumer and for you guys in PUC. Because again, you're gonna lowball them, you're gonna do the way what you're gonna do. It's not gonna be that much of a cost difference if I kind of get a little bit of a gist. If you're in the industry long enough, you kind of know what you can and what you cannot bid on. But again, by saying that that's the reason why is the competitiveness of somebody else might know and they're gonna do this and they're gonna do that. That's all assumptions, not facts. Just like how Senator Glenn Wakai just said, we don't know if get pukas in the China wall, right? We don't know if there's holes in them or there's a telescope on the top that you can look down. We don't know. But again, we're gonna trust the fact of PUC and you guys the same way. So again, open it up, letting people know so we can know what is going on and what is going to cost to the consumer. Simple.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, that, project developers probably do have a gist, right, of a range that will be acceptable. The difference is if we open up this black box, as it's being called, and let them look at our assumptions and our pricing and our methodology, that's typically held, confidential. They'll go from having a gist to knowing right where they need to bid. So the difference is the savings to customers, that, customers won't be able to realize that savings if the developers are able to kind of manipulate and, kind of frustrate the competitive bidding process.
So, Chair, okay, so I understand that 100%. But let's just say I bid on one job, right? I'm the lowest bidder, come in. We're supposed to save the consumer money. But after the project is done and change order, I am the highest bidder than the highest bidder that went bid. You see what I'm saying? There's still yet, again, transparency. If the community know that I came in at $1,000, that the thing would cost $20,000, right? Then there's a problem. There's a problem on transparency, right? But we don't know those things, right? Until later on, we find out the project is done and they would pay $6 million over budget of what the cost of the place was gonna be. That's the reason why I had them build on the procurement. To change the procurement, if you change the thing more than the original bid by so much percent, put it back out to bid. Because the person that is paying for it is the taxpayers, the consumer, at the end of the day. We paid for that stadium over budget over there at the University of Hawaii. So that's what I'm saying. So if you get one legit, at the end of the day, it's still yet questionable about we saving money. You keep saying that, we're gonna save money with the consumer. But even though you guys do $1 million job, right, you get the job, and then the thing will cost $5 million. Did it really save the consumer money? Not unless you stay within the cost, which we never do.
Yeah,
Thank
so,
you, Chair.
thank you. So I think the public procurement process is a little different than our, utility RFPs. When we select the lowest bids or, the best projects, then it goes before the PUC for an approval process. So if there are changes, like we did see, some of the projects that fell out of the stage 2 RFP because of inflation and, supply chain issues in prior years, we would have to, if there's a change in the price that the developer can make the project, we would have to go in for an amendment before the PUC. So that price, would be, again, before the PUC, and they would deliberate on the new project with the higher price.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Recess. Okay, reconvening on this Wednesday, February 4th, 2026, 9:30 a.m. joint committee agenda between the CPN and EIG committees. And we will be making recommendations on these measures. The first bill, SB 2033, relating to renewable energy. There are a number of issues on this bill that we would like to work out and see if we can keep this measure moving. So we will defer decision-making on this measure until, for the CPN committee, we will make recommendations on Tuesday, February 10th, 2026 at 9:30 a.m. in this room, 229.
For EIG, we're going to be doing the same, except we will be contemplating the revisions on Tuesday, February 10th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon that day.
Okay, thank you. The next measure, SB 2487, relating to the PUC. The recommendation is to pass this measure with a effective date of July 1, 2050, and to also make some technical non-substantive changes. Members, comments, questions? Okay, if not, Vice Chair for the vote passing with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Thank you. Vice Chair also votes aye. Senator Lamassoure. Aye. Senator McKelvey.
Yes.
Senator Awa.
Aye.
Your measure is adopted.
Thank you.
For EIG, same recommendation. Any discussion? If not, Senator Chang, I vote yes.
Chair's recommendation for Senate Bill 2487 is to pass with amendments. Chair votes yes. Vice Chair votes aye. Senator DeCoy?
Aye.
Senator Richards?
Aye.
Senator Favela?
Aye.
Recommendation is adopted.
And the final measure on this agenda, SB 2497, relating to electric energy. The recommendation is to keep this measure moving. We will, the recommendation is to pass with amendments, adopting the recommended amendments from the Office of Information Practices, and to defect the effective date of this measure to July 1, 2050. Any discussion?
Sure.
Senator Richards.
Yeah, quick comment, just listening very carefully to the conversation. I don't disagree, and I think with moving this forward, I do listen very carefully to what people are saying, so I'm going to be voting with reservations because I agree moving it forward, but I understand the concern.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Chair, seeing, a lot of discussion, again, like to, have more discussion on it. I'm gonna be voting with reservations as well.
So noted. Okay, if there's no other discussion, Vice Chair passing with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Thank you. Of the CPN members present, are there any voting with reservations or objections? Hearing none, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you.
For EIG, same recommendation. Any discussion? If not, Senator Chang, I vote yes.
Chair's recommendation for Senate Bill 2497 is to pass with amendments. Chair votes yes. Vice Chair votes aye. Senator DeCoy?
Reservations?
Senator Richards?
Reservations.
Senator Favela?
Aye.
Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. We're adjourned.
Last year's